I iron the collar I wear when I want her father to think I was born tidy. In the reflection of the hallway mirror, I could see our kitchen, lilies in a glass vase, a bakery box tied with ribbon, my wife rehearsing a toast with a smile that knew where every syllable should land. The birthday was a big one, 70. Entire families orbit numbers like that. She set her note cards down when her phone vibrated, slid into the pantry, and pulled the door until it was almost closed. Old houses carry whispers. The pantry vent might as well have been a microphone. "Don't worry, I'll keep him steady," she said low. A pause. "Yes, I know the schedule. No, he hasn't signed anything new since spring." My hand stopped on the iron. "Schedule?" Another pause. "Mom, please. I can handle tonight. He'll give the speech. Dad will announce the trust. 3-year vesting triggers after midnight. That's the point." A small laugh I didn't recognize. "Yes, I know why I married him. You don't need to remind me." The iron sat sizzling air. I felt something cold climb my ribs, as if the house were taking back heat. She opened the pantry, saw me in the mirror, and gave that perfect, curated smile. "Ready?" she asked, breezy again. "Almost," I said, and the word came out steady because muscle memory can be a cruel angel. On our way out, she repeated the choreography. Lipstick, keys, a light touch to my forearm that said we're a team to anyone watching. In the car, she talked about seating charts and playlists. I nodded at the road, tracked the mile markers, and tried to tell myself there were innocent versions of the word vesting. There aren't. Not in marriages. By the time we pulled into the valet line, I decided on a rule. No scenes. No questions with a bow tie on. If I was going to let suspicion into the room, I would dress it in facts. She squeezed my hand before we stepped inside. "Thank you for doing this," she said. "For what?" "For being easy," she said, and the door swung open on applause. Everything in the hall was designed to keep unease out. Amber uplighting that pretended to be candlelight, round tables that made enemies face each other, a band that had played the same 4 chords since Reagan and didn't see any reason to stop. Her father, Richard, greeted me with the handshake of a man who still believes he can fix any system if he's allowed to take it apart on a table first. He clapped my shoulder, introduced me to a director, introduced me to a cousin, introduced me to a bottle of wine he pretended came from his backyard. "You'll say a few words, won't you?" he asked, paternal and practiced. "If you'd like," I said, and felt my throat study the word. My mother-in-law floated in on a cloud of perfume and certainty. She kissed me on both cheeks like diplomacy, then pulled my wife aside with fingers that looked manicured for leverage. Their heads bent together, 2 architects examining a blueprint. When they separated, my wife's smile went from good to bulletproof. I moved through the room doing the job husbands do, laughing at Uncle Paul's joke for the 4th time, carrying plates that had no intention of being eaten, finding chairs for people who refused to sit. All the while the word vesting tapped the back of my skull like a polite woodpecker. I found my wife's cards on the sweetheart table when she drifted to the powder room with 3 bridesmaids in waiting. She'd underlined 3 phrases. "Family values, your trust in me, what you build will live on." In the margin, tiny pencil, sign after toast. A chill walked across the back of my neck in dress shoes. Richard took the mic first. His speech was a master class in wealth pretending to be wisdom. He told a story about starting with nothing, leaving out the parts where nothing wore a college ring and answered to the name of a partner. Then he pivoted to legacy. "I'm not going anywhere," he said to applause, "but I'm old enough to put my affairs where paper can hold them." He announced the family trust as if unveiling a statue. He spoke about stewardship, heirs, and timelines. "There are milestones," he said, "because commitment should look like time as well as sentiment. The room hummed with agreement the way rooms do when they've already decided to. My wife's turn. She read beautifully. She always does. She told the story of her father teaching her to ride a bike and to negotiate a contract in the same afternoon. People laughed. She touched her heart at the right sentence. Then she slipped in a line none of them noticed because it had been taught to wear pearls. I'm grateful for a partner who believes in long horizons. Long horizons. Schedules. After midnight. I clapped when everyone clapped. I hugged her when everyone hugged. When she leaned into me, whispering, "You were perfect," because that's what she says even when I don't speak, I felt more like a prop than a person. Props get stored after use. People drive home. A cousin dragged me toward a photo booth. I smiled at paper flowers and thought about documents that make or break families the way weather makes or breaks picnics. As the band switched to the song Richard claims was our wedding song, even though he was married twice, I slipped away toward the corridor to the left of the bar. Plush carpet, tasteful sconces, doorways labeled private, the arteries that keep the banquet hall moving while the heart performs out front. I wasn't hunting a scene. I was hunting confirmation. Halfway down the corridor, I heard the two voices I'd heard in the pantry. This time they weren't careful. Maybe the soft carpet made them bold. Maybe certainty breeds volume. "He'll sign after the toast," my mother-in-law said. "He asked what for," my wife replied. "I told him it's a revised will acknowledgement. He trusts me." "Because you made him," her mother said, not unkind, not kind. "I married him," my wife said. "You married Dad. We both did what was asked." Silence so complete I could hear the air conditioner change its mind. "It's not about love," her mother continued. "Love is volatile. Stability is contractual. The trust is safer if it passes through you. This protects the family from outsiders if anything happens." "Outsiders," my wife repeated. "You don't have to like the word," her mother said. "You just have to understand the math." A server turned the corner and saw me. I pretended to be deeply interested in a framed photograph of a boat that never existed. The voices lowered. A door closed softly. I stared at the carpet until the pattern stopped swimming. I had until dessert to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. Back in the hall, the applause didn't know what it was clapping for anymore. I found Richard near the bar, surrounded by men who know how to measure respect by the ounce. "Can I see the acknowledgement?" I asked him, smiling like a man asking for the label on a wine. He laughed. "Already working the paperwork, are we?" He pulled a thin leather folio from the inside of his jacket. "Just a formality. You'll initial on the spouse page. You're part of this family. We want everyone aligned." I flipped it open. The first page was ceremonial, fonts that were tuxedos, a heading that said restatement like the word itself was a gift. The second page had the teeth, a schedule of distributions contingent on marital status and qualifying tenure. 3 years. Tonight was 3 years exactly. There was also a clause I'd never seen that smelled like a trap under vanilla. Spousal consent to trustee discretion in the event of dissolution. Sign here, date here. Neat lines where people like me put themselves in ink. "What's all this do?" I asked. I was proud of my voice for not shaking. "Protects what I built," he said, matter of fact. "Keeps the wolves out if someone gets, what's the word, creative. Wolves like me?" I asked, very softly. He blinked, realizing the unpretty version of his own sentence. "No offense intended," he said quickly. "You're a good man. This just keeps things familial." I handed the folio back with a smile that made my face ache. "Of course," I said. "After her toast." He nodded, pleased, and clapped my shoulder again, like a referee patting a player who'd agreed to stay in bounds. I found my wife near the stage and watched her laugh at a joke she wasn't listening to. She saw me, floated over, and took my hand. "You okay?" she asked, the kind of question you ask when what you really mean is you look like a man who saw the ocean from underneath. "Remind me what I'm signing," I said. "Formality," she said. "Dad's lawyers redid the language to reflect the new trust. Spousal consent, acknowledgement of the restatement, blah blah. Nothing changes your life." "Whose life does it change?" I asked. She tilted her head, the way she does when moving the ball from one court to another. "Ours," she said brightly. "For the better." I looked at her ring and wondered what it had been buying this whole time. On my way to the men's room, I stopped at the small desk by the coat check again and asked if they had a private office I could use for a quick call about a delayed delivery. The attendant, happy to be useful, handed me a key to a door marked simply manager. Inside, a small desk, a softer lamp, a chair that didn't expect speeches. I shut the door and called Evan, the one friend I trust with the ugly versions of my face. "Tell me I'm paranoid," I said. "You hate when I lie," he replied. "Start at the top." I gave him the pantry, the corridor, the folio, the clause that tasted like poison disguised as paperwork. He listened without interrupting, the way he does when he wants to save his breath for when it matters. "Okay," he said finally. "Here's the shape. They want your signature so that if, when the marriage ends, the trustee can keep assets in the family without your consent or recourse. The vesting milestone makes your wife a preferred conduit. If you sign, you're agreeing in advance that you're not the family." I sat very still. "Is this legal?" "Probably," he said. "Is it moral?" "Absolutely not." "What do I do?" "Don't sign anything tonight," he said. "And if you can, get a photo of that clause. Also, consider whether Matthew came into your life as a person or as a solution. That's a different story." "It's the same story," he said gently. "You just learned a new paragraph." I took a breath like a man who's been underwater too long. "If I don't sign, I blow up her family's night. If you do sign," he said, "you blow up your own." The knock at the door was polite, managerial. "Everything all right in there?" The attendant's voice. "Fine," I called. "Be right out." I set the phone down, snapped a quiet photo of the clause with the care of a man stealing back his name, and slipped the key under the door on my way out. The band was playing something joyful. The room obliged. I walked back into it, a smile sutured where fear had been, and took my place beside my wife, close enough to smell the perfume I bought her, far enough to see the game board. When Richard handed me a pen shaped like generosity, my fingers didn't move. I looked at my wife, then at him, then at the line where my absence suddenly looked like a sentence. "After the cake," I said lightly, smiling like a son. "It'll make a better photo." They laughed, flattered by ceremony. I tucked the pen into my pocket. It felt heavier than it should. I had until dessert to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. The air on the balcony was cooler, washed by the hum of the city beyond the tall glass doors. Conversations behind me melted into the muffled blur of music and laughter. Out here, it smelled of asphalt and expensive cigars. A temporary exile for those who needed a break from champagne. I leaned against the railing, the polished metal cold through my shirt. The pen in my pocket pressed against my ribs like a guilty conscience. From inside came the sound of toasts, more stories, more curated nostalgia. Each word from that microphone was a brick in the family fortress they were building. And I was the man standing with dynamite, unsure whether to light it. The sliding door whispered open. My wife stepped out, her dress catching the faint yellow glow of the exterior lights. She closed the door carefully, shutting out most of the noise. "There you are," she said, too softly for anyone else. Why'd you disappear? I didn't turn right away. Needed some air. She walked closer, her heels tapping against the stone floor, each step measured. You scared me, sneaking off like that. You should be scared, I said. Finally, I looked at her. The poise in her eyes cracked for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. She folded her arms. You've been off all night. What's going on? You tell me, I said. Why don't you explain what I'm really signing tonight? Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She glanced at the door, making sure no one could hear. You listened. I listened, I confirmed. I also read. Richard handed me the folio. You didn't even bother to hide the clause. She exhaled, a sharp breath that fogged in the cool air. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I said. You married me because your family needed a conduit. 3 years of marriage, spousal consent, the trust stays sealed tight, and I'm the fool with the pen. Her arms tightened around herself. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it, I said. Do you love me? Or do you just love what my name buys you in your father's ledger? The silence between us was heavier than any answer. She turned toward the city lights. You make this sound like I don't care about you. Do you? I asked. She didn't answer. Behind the glass, laughter swelled at some joke I couldn't hear. The life inside carried on, blissfully ignorant. Out here, truth hummed like a storm cloud. Why didn't you tell me? I pressed. Because you would have left, she whispered. And I couldn't risk that. Not with Dad watching. Not with Mom planning everything. They told me. Of course they did, I interrupted. They built you for this. A pawn in a pretty dress. She whirled on me then, her eyes blazing. I'm not a pawn. I make choices. And I chose to keep us stable. You think love pays bills? You think love survives in this family? Stability is the only thing that does. Her words echoed like slaps. For a moment, I almost believed she believed them. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You've mistaken stability for chains. And you're trying to lock me in with you. Her breath shuddered. What are you going to do? I pulled the pen from my pocket, held it between us like a weapon. That depends. Are you willing to tell them the truth? Or do you want me to? Her face drained of color. You wouldn't. Try me, I said. For a long moment we stood like statues, her clutching the railing, me holding that pen like it weighed more than a sword. Finally she turned, pressing her back against the railing, eyes wet. If you say anything tonight, you'll destroy me. No, I said. Your silence already did that. I'm just deciding whether Matthew, the man I used to be, gets to live with a lie. The balcony door slid open again. Her mother stepped out, eyes scanning us like a hawk. Is everything all right? She asked too sweetly. Peachy, I said, slipping the pen back into my pocket. Her mother's gaze lingered on me, then shifted to her daughter. Something unspoken passed between them. We need to get ready for the cake, she said finally. The photographer wants family shots. She turned and went back inside. My wife touched my sleeve, voice trembling. Please, just smile through tonight. We'll talk after. I pulled my arm away. After doesn't exist if you bury me before midnight. I left her there, framed against the city skyline, a queen in a kingdom made of paper. I couldn't take the noise anymore. I slipped out through the side door, into the cold night air. The street was quieter than the party, only the occasional honk of a car, the rustle of trees lining the pavement. A row of parked cars gleamed under the streetlights, their windows catching fragments of neon from across the avenue. I paced. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You don't know me, but you need to know you're not the first. Call me. Attached was a name, Ezra. I froze. The night pressed tighter around me. I dialed before doubt could talk me out of it. A man's voice answered, low, careful. I'm guessing you're the husband. I swallowed. Who are you? Doesn't matter. What matters is I used to be in your shoes. Married in. Promises of trust. Signatures for stability. And then discarded once the ink dried. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles burned. You're telling me this has happened before? Yes, he said. And it'll happen again. Unless someone stops them. My stomach twisted. Why are you warning me? Because I wish someone had warned me, he said. Don't sign. And if you want to hit them where it hurts, make it public. The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone, at the street, at my reflection in the black mirror of a parked car. The man looking back at me wasn't the husband who walked into this night. He was someone else now, someone holding a truth sharp enough to cut an entire family. Inside, the music shifted. They'd be lighting candles soon, singing songs, expecting me to stand at the table with my pen, smiling like the man they thought I was. I slipped the phone into my pocket, took a long breath, and made a decision. I wasn't signing anything tonight, but I was going to speak. The hall was buzzing when I stepped back inside, like a hive swollen with sugar and wine. The cake stood in the center, frosted perfection, candles waiting for a wish. Richard was already at the microphone, warming the crowd with a booming voice. He gestured toward me, smiling like he'd never doubted my role in the script. Now, before we cut the cake, he said, my son-in-law would like to say a few words. Applause erupted. Dozens of eyes turned to me, expecting something polished, loyal, safe. I felt the weight of the pen still in my pocket, heavy as guilt. I stepped forward. My wife's hand brushed mine as if begging in silence. Her mother's eyes narrowed like blades. Dad-in-law beamed, proud and oblivious. I took the mic. My voice came out steady, almost too steady. Thank you. Tonight is a celebration, a milestone for a man who's built something impressive. And I was asked to sign a piece of paper tonight. Something meant to keep this family safe. A ripple of confusion spread through the guests. I continued, keeping my eyes on Matthew, my brother-in-law, who grinned uncertainly, sensing tension but not knowing why. But before I sign anything, I think honesty should be on the table too. The air tightened. You could almost hear the glasses pause midair. I've learned that my marriage wasn't about love, at least not for everyone in this room. It was about contracts. About making sure wealth stayed locked away. About turning a husband into a safeguard, not a partner. Gasps. Murmurs. My wife's face blanched. I won't be a signature on a ledger, I said. I won't be a pawn moved across a board I never agreed to play on. Richard stepped forward, eyes flashing. That's enough, he hissed. No, I said into the mic. Not tonight. Because tonight I choose myself. I won't sign. And I won't let you dress up betrayal as stability. The hall exploded. Some relatives rose to argue. Others whispered furiously. Some stared at me like I'd grown horns. My wife stumbled forward, tears streaking her face. Please, she whispered, voice shaking. Don't do this here. This is the only place to do it, I answered. Because here, in front of everyone, lies can't survive. I set the microphone down gently. The sound of it hitting the stand echoed like a gavel. And then I walked away. Hours later, I sat in the quiet of our living room. No music, no laughter, no clinking glasses, just silence heavy enough to drown in. The vase of lilies on the table looked too perfect, like plastic decorations at a play that had ended badly. The door creaked. My wife stepped in, shoulders hunched, makeup smeared. She looked smaller than she had on the balcony, smaller than she had in front of the crowd. "You ruined everything," she whispered. I didn't look up from the papers I had spread on the table. The photograph of the clause, the county marriage records I'd pulled earlier, the phone still showing Ezra's last message. "No," I said quietly. "I saved myself." Tears welled in her eyes. "We could have had it all." I finally looked at her. "We could have had love. But you traded it for contracts." She sank into a chair, sobbing silently. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. I gathered the papers, folded them into a folder, and stood. "Tomorrow, I'll call a lawyer," I said. "Tonight, I'll sleep as myself again." Her sobs followed me down the hall, but I didn't turn back. For once, the house felt like mine. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence was no longer suffocating. It was clean, honest, and for the first time in years, I could breathe.